Get up and dance. Get up and dance. Trinidad, St. Lucia, Grenada, right now even in Jamaica. Well, it's mass, 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 mass. Thousands on the street reveling. Good God, that's the way we like it. So Lego, 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 Lego. Music from the flying cloud, and they still want more music from Sweetie and Mars. And they jumping higher, whoa, 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 jump up. Boy, 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 jump up. Boy, 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 jump up. Boy, 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 jump up. Who are rule this dance? JAB. Boy, want them who are mash it down. All are we, eh? Tell them who are rule this dance. JAB. Boy, want them who are mash it down. All are we, eh? Boy, get up and dance. Get up and dance. Get up and dance.
Pleasant day or pleasant night, whichever part of the world you're from, and that would be applicable. We are here for a special discussion, interview, conversation, whichever way you like it, with the leader of the opposition, former Grenada Prime Minister, and to give him all his accolades, a sportsman in general, when you look at it. And we're talking about Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. And we are here together with Linda Shrika, who is within the journalism profession. I don't think she needs any introduction. The Linda Shrika, as I know her to be. And Troy Gill of MTV. And we are here engaging with Dr. Mitchell as it relates to, his outlook, what is happening with the governance of the country, and he would have a lot to tell. Dr. Mitchell, it's nice of you to allow us to come within the confines of your domain. Well, we're going to talk a lot about the issues of the day, the politics, the life in general as it relates to the governance of the country. So we'll allow you to open back to give an introductory statement. As a matter of fact, I know the first thing I would tell you is to greet us.
Yes, well, Salo, let me officially welcome you. And of course, it's a long time we have not seen each other directly. So, and of course, Linda and Troy and other members of the media, welcome to this special, as you said, discussion, interview, communication activity, whatever you want to define it as. Welcome. I wanted to do this session really in the context of having been out of government for literally 9 months, having lost the election in June 23rd, 2022. It should be recalled then as good patriots, as the NNP have always been. Whenever we have lost an election, as we have before, we have always complimented the winning team. Although in several occasions when we won, we were never complimented. That's another story. Never once in all the victory. But that is just to show the NNP's approach to governance and the fact that when the people speak, we don't necessarily have to like it, but we have to accept it. That is a principle of parliamentary democratic system that we operate in. And I made it clear, and when I the 2 days, I think the day or 2 days after the election, I did call the winning Prime Minister. The Prime Minister formed the government then, Dick Mitchell, and congratulated him. And did in fact indicate that I was going to be doing all I can to help in whatever way that the government wished me to do so. I made it very clear that as long as the issues involve the development of the country and the success of the country always count on me. I've always said to my own party supporters, country, Grenada comes first, NNP and other things after. So anything that is good for the country has to be good for NNP, and it has to be good for me, and should be good for everybody. I did tell the Prime Minister that I was willing to provide advice. He did say, indicated to me that he was, he wanted to thank me for calling, and he said, well, look, I am, as you know, first time into this job, and I'm pretty much overwhelmed with all the things that are going on right now that we have to do. And therefore, in due course, when I settle down, I will call you. And because knowing that you've been in government for so long, for 23 years as Prime Minister, and your experience would be helpful in guiding and providing advice on issues of importance to the country. And I did say that I was prepared to play that role. I said, well, I will not involve in the politics directly, because as leader of the New National Party and as a political person, I can't be. And not only that, I still have my bias as far as the politics is concerned. And he did say to me that he was going to call me. I didn't make a joke to him at the time. I said, well, please don't spoil the Mitchell name. And he had a good laugh. And that was it. But what struck me was 2 days afterwards, when he was doing his first national address, he said to the nation, and I was shocked, that I received a call from the former Prime Minister. And I want to make it clear that he called me, and I did not call him. These were his words. I was shocked. So the impression given was as if I was begging for something. And I said, well, this is, as far as I'm concerned, completely different from the conversation that we had. And since then, he has never called. But I did take the opportunity in Parliament on one occasion and said to him just what I just said, that I was pretty disturbed with your comment on a national address where you sort of indicated as if I was begging for something. I said to him, Prime Minister, I did nothing from you or anyone. Nothing at all. Whatever I am going to be doing is to be in the best interest of the country, not of you or me or any individual party or person. So I was extremely disturbed as to your comments. And to me, I said, well, if that was the case, I was not going to initiate another call. But why should I? But this time it would look like if I'm begging for something. So that was unfortunately, that incident happened. I made a point. When you are in the political environment, in my view, that you have to come to terms that sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. That's the nature. We didn't expect to lose this last election. It was not it was a very difficult time for me and for members of our party, but you have to accept it. That's the nature of the business, and we accepted it. But I also make it very clear, my intervention in politics and political life have to having given up my professional career and tremendous resources in Washington to come home. The primary reason was a concern for people, particularly poor and vulnerable people that I grew up with over the years, right throughout the country. Having, Selvin, as you know, played cricket and been all over the country, having been the first General Secretary of the Secondary School Teachers Association, taught here for years, and having been involved in a lot of community activities in my own villages and community and the country as a whole. I have a passion for people. That is where I'm coming from. And therefore, my entrance and involvement in politics primarily has to be about that. To me, if one is in the political arena and you're in a position of governing, of governance, or leadership in office, you have to measure your performance on the basis of how you lift up the ordinary man. The government of the day has a responsibility to initiate policies and activities to improve the lot of the country as a whole. And therefore, each person in his own way has a responsibility to use the government policies in the best way to improve him or herself, himself or herself, and to make the best of their own lives. And the people should not sit down and wait for government to do things for them. Use the available environmental conditions created by the government and do what you can to make things better for yourself. And in the same way, you helping others. For example, you said no business, you're creating jobs. You're helping your family, you're helping your community, and you're helping the country. So I see this as a fundamental thing. So government has a fundamental responsibility to everyone to feel part of that, what is taking place. And then everyone will be happy with everything government does. But government must always have one very basic focus: the poor and the vulnerable. The poor and the vulnerable. And guys, I want to make this point. One of the things that drove me into teaching and made me a satisfied teacher was the same thing that guided me in the politics. When you go into a classroom and you're teaching, you're imparting knowledge, and like my field is mathematics, whether it's in high school, whether it's in university, college, or wherever. The satisfaction one gets is when you see, because a bright child, he doesn't need the teacher that much. That's a fact. The bright child, because of his intellect and capabilities and maybe environmental conditions of his own society, maybe his father and mother have resources that can do all the things, extra stuff he wants. He does not need the teacher as much as the child who may be struggling, maybe need the teacher's support a lot more. And also, that child coming from his own environment of poverty may need some extra support. When you see that child move from here to there, that is what gives you the satisfaction. So you feel you achieved something. But the child who is bright, whose parents afford, and is doing well, yes, you're happy for him, but you don't feel that level of satisfaction or I will say, comfort. I say the same thing about politics. The people who are able, who have a good start in life, succeed, you're happy for them. You don't, in fact, I don't believe in this philosophy, you must pull down somebody to help somebody up. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that. There's some aspects of the socialist philosophy that says this. I don't believe in this. I believe you help people upwards, but you don't have to pull down others to help them. That's my concept. And therefore, I see that a role in government. And therefore, this, because of that burning desire to see people move up the ladder, so to speak, you will see that over my years in politics, that principle and that passion for those beliefs have come true. It burns me when I see people unable to send their kids to school. And I have examples where I was in opposition in 2008, 2013. Well, parents are coming to me in opposition and asking for help to send their kids to school. And then a parent I could never forget said to me, so I said, they had no money for bus to go to school. 2 kids go to secondary school, different parts of the country. So I asked her, I said, so what was happening? Were you not getting any help? Because we had programs where we were providing help in transport and support for kids to go to school, uniform allowance and so on. And they cut a lot of that. They were giving free books, but no transport, no uniform and so on. So I asked her, well, what were you doing? How are the kids going to school? She said, one go to school 2 days, another one go to school. I said, well, you can't do this. She said, this kid is being destroyed. I said, Dr. Mitchell, what am I going to do? I'm not going to sell myself to earn $1. We're struggling. So I said, okay, leave that. And I called 2 friends of mine and said, look what the situation is. 2 business persons, and both of them agree to provide help constantly every week, provide support for the 2 kids. Today's kids are 2 successful kids. 2 successful kids. And the parents will never forget that period. They can't forget the business persons, and they won't forget my initiative. I want to give in this example to say what I am going to come to say now. Having lost government, knowing all the programs we had in place to help people, I am particularly very concerned, and that's why I'm doing this, deciding now where I remain quiet. I have not said much, as you know. Some people are wondering what am I doing? They have not heard from me, and I said quite rightly so. People were tired of the NNP, they wanted change, they got change. And the worst thing that I can do, NNP should do, is to behave as if we are hurting or kind of feeling that we're angry, we haven't lost. You have to give the new government a chance. They may bumble some things, but you don't jump on them every little mistake. And especially, there's something called honeymoon. That's how I see it. And I watched what was taking place and saw some of the mistakes and so on. And that is where I blame the government to some extent, because you had the opportunity to give advice. And you sought advice. And anyone with his own sense of pride would not want to go and say, I gave Selwyn advice, I gave the Prime Minister. You'd be stupid to do so, and so on. But they did not do this. But then you start seeing a lot of the decisions coming down, where people are being, the poorer people are being singled out. If you guys remember, the first budget presented by the government, 2 points stood out, and I did not see the media, and I did not see the country taking up those points significantly. I made the point, the Prime Minister was reading a document, his budget speech, but the budget document had some completely different numbers. The Prime Minister was talking about praising how he's going to be expanding opportunities for youth and for the vulnerable and all kinds of nice language in the speech. But the document was showing a tremendous cut in those programs. And I asked them how do you reconcile both? That's what I asked. And said, something is not right here. It appears that the budget document was written in the Ministry of Finance, but the numbers adjusted accordingly. But it seemed that the speech was written somewhere else. I made a joke of it. Like, I don't know, but I made that joke. But that was a serious point. And what has happened afterwards? Program for the youth was cut. Many of the MNIB programs, many of the initiatives to help young people, especially in the context, guys, you remember, the people who basically, in terms of a sect of the population that brought this government into office was the young people, the youths. Those programs are cut. There were not much emphasis in sports and activities of this nature. But that happened. The case of the seed program, the couple $1 million was cut. So I made the point in the presentation. I said, listen, the government either is deciding, one, to reduce the amount it's going to give to the seed persons, each of the seed persons, despite the pronouncement before the budget that what we were giving was too little. Even what we were giving, they either decide they will have to cut it per individual or reduce the numbers considerably so. Nobody said a word. But what happened? Now we're seeing two things, both situations occurring. A number of people are being removed from the seed program for all kinds of reasons. They're doing a relook at the people, criteria for how they got in and all kinds of stuff. And it's done at a political level. That is being done, and which is clearly unfortunate. When you're dealing with vulnerable people and people that have difficulties coping with their daily lives, you can't be talking about who is NNP and NDC. And I used to caution people in my own political organization, because you had elements who would come over. Why? This person should be there, the big NDC. This person, stop it. The people, the program is there because to help vulnerable people. Period. All persons have sacrificed for where this country is today. All persons and their family pay taxes. When the government is elected, it has to be elected for all and sundry. So, as long as the persons are vulnerable, that's the criteria. I don't want to hear that they're NDP or NDC. Don't come and tell me. No, I'm saying that to say that's a philosophy. I cannot tell you that every single thing we said in government was in fact implemented by all and sundry. I would never sit and tell you there were no mistakes made. But if they were brought to my attention, we deal with it. That's how I see this thing. So I'm concerned. How do you single out these people to remove basic services from them? So that's the fundamental, the general problem, the economic situation in the country. Everybody's hurting. I mean, those of you who go around the country, and you don't have to be an economist or do a serious scientific survey to know what's happening in the country. You go by a normal alignment spot, whether it's St. Andrews or St. George's, a bar with guys always on a Friday and a Saturday or afternoon, evening, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. You see guys there either playing dominoes, having a drink or chatting. Like this was gone. You hardly see this around the place now. And clearly, you've seen there's a clear sign of economic decay. So the shopkeepers are balling, the vendors selling in the market, those vendors. I mean, I give an example of a situation. When as Prime Minister, I go to a certain market. I don't want to say which one because I don't want people to feel that I'm talking about them. And as you go there as Prime Minister, you buy a few things. And you can see those who are happy to see you, and you can see those whose faces are not very nice. So, but you make smiles to everybody, and you leave. And you understand, when in government, if you expect every place you go, everybody going to be smiling for you, then you should better go into a different profession. After the election, about 3-4 months after that, I went to that same place. And so I went and chatted. You won't believe, everybody wanted a hug. Everybody was, you wouldn't believe it was the same people. Clearly there are elements there who supported me, but everybody, you couldn't say there were anybody who were hostile to me. In other words, the environment and the welcome was better than when I was in government. And I remember a case where 2 ladies came up and they wanted to take a picture. And a lady who's normally obviously friendly to my political organization, "Doc, be careful with them, they're traitors." They were I said, "No, my dear, they're not traitors. They're not traitors, they're my sisters," and I made a good laugh of it. But I'm making this point to show that we cannot be victimizing people who are in a position for our help. That's our job and our responsibility. And we, if you're in government, you can't be singling out people. So I'm saying, you go to the busmen. It was clear during the election. You see buses all over the place, and many of them were very much with the yellow stickers and so on and so on. But all busmen balling out. That's a fact. Because the economy of the country is contracted in when I say economic activity, I mean, that is a clear indication of what is happening. And one thing people have to understand, and I heard a gentleman on a program recently make the point, and I don't think those who are not maybe understanding what he's saying might not realize it. He said, look, anytime the poor people in the country, the man in the street is not working, you're seeing the evidence of this. Those of us who are better off, so to speak, when we get money, we don't necessarily spend it in the little shops or on buses. I have my own transport, so the bus man not going to get a penny from me. I would go to a supermarket. Generally speaking, some of us may decide as a special case to go on in the vendor's market and buy stuff. We are not the ones that circulate the money in the country. So when we are working and we have resources, if the ordinary man below do not have it, we'll have a problem. It will see the end product of the lack of economic activity around the streets in the country. And I think that's a fundamental problem. So those who are complaining about when Christmas time and we had starting early October, almost 5-6 fortnights, over 6,000 people working. You saw the buzz on the streets all around the country. These people, they go in all the stores, they spend money buying things for their family, their children, their cousins, and you see the money circulating. The busman they're up and down the streets, you see it. The vendors in the market, they're doing well. And people, you can feel that vibes. That didn't happen 2 little fortnights. Much less persons. I don't believe you had 2,000 people on the road compared to 6,000 in our time. And this Easter time, we put out some roadblock. Some people call it waste of money, and I always challenge people, do not come. One day I was challenged. I said, don't you find that this roadwork is a waste of taxpayers' money? I listened to the brother. I said, listen, let me tell you something. I have a problem. I am one who believes that everybody should work for the monies they're receiving. So I'm not going to support. If there's idleness on the road, I'm not going to say it's right. But don't come to me and single out those people that get a little fortnight here and there, barely surviving. And you have a lot of people working in government jobs, making thousands of dollars doing nothing, but you will say that word. I got a problem with that. So if you would single out the road workers and say they're not producing, and you also talk about those in the public service and other places that have government jobs and making thousands, not $200 and so on a week and so on, thousands of dollars a month, and you're not saying anything, please, you're not going to have any sympathy from me. And so I want to close there, and I took some time because I wanted to give a feel of some of the fundamental reasons why I've decided at this time to invite you guys to speak to you and for you to question me on some of the fundamental issues facing the country. So that will lay the groundwork for any other issues. And feel free to ask any questions that you want to ask as relate to me, myself, where I'm at right now, the views on different issues facing the country, additionally to what I have said to you already. And we take it from there. Once again, welcome.
Let me start the ball rolling. Looking at the situation and looking at the economy, one of the fundamentals is that anytime there's a poor circulation of money, you tend to have problems. Yeah?
Yes.
You are the head of the Public Accounts Committee where all the finances are checked.
Yes.
And for the past 9.5 months, what do you find? Have you found anything?
Well, first of all, we have not, the Public Accounts Committee could only function based on reports given to it by the Director of Audit after the Accounts Department submit their reports. In fact, we have had no such documents yet. In fact, recently I asked the staff to find out, and the Director of Audit, President Director, indicated that they have reports for 2016 to 2019, but they have been audited. So they don't have the end product yet. After that is done, then I would convene a meeting of the Public Accounts Committee to look at those accounts. But that is still during NNP time, but at least an opportunity for the Public Accounts Committee to get moving. They did indicate they have not received any report yet from 2019 to 2022. So I can't comment on the public accounts situation, but I certainly can comment on what is happening, as I pointed out a while ago, the present fiscal situation in the country. But remember, the Prime Minister himself, in the initial stage, did say that he met a pregnant treasury. These were his words. And he was shocked at the amount of money NNP left. That's what he said. So they cannot say that we did not manage the country properly to find enormous amount of surpluses, even after we provided tremendous amount of jobs. The traffic wardens, the environmental wardens, the thousands of people on road work around the country, lots of the projects that they want to take claim of now were in fact initiated by us. You saw the major work in River Road. In fact, I understand it was literally at a standstill now. That project has stopped. The Mount Kuma Road, which some people were brave enough to open, I couldn't believe it. The government opened the project and didn't even have the courtesy to invite a member of the former government who, in fact, laid the foundation, put aside the money available, got the contracts going, and to see that that road was done in light of the problems that you had in Molyneux. For them to go and open it and give the impression it is their project, to me, I think it's politically very unwise. If I was in their position, I would certainly have invited the Minister of Works. You don't have to invite me. the Minister of Works then, Minister Cox, and Minister Bowen, Bowen was the first person who, when the project initiated, and also he went on the Ministry of Finance to make sure that money is available to do the project. And the government could take credit for completing and finishing it off, and they would look good. But to imply that the project was all yours, your initiative, and unfortunately, that's not a very good political approach to this. So I'm just making the point that we had resources there, and you could have felt what was taking place in the country. But it's clear now that you do have a serious problem as far as resources. It seems that the government is relying heavily on CBI. We had put conditions relative to what's taking place in Ukraine now with the Russians. But we were very concerned, and we know the Americans and other people are very concerned with a lot of these Russians who might be freeing what is taking place in Ukraine and that part of the world, and may not be appropriately checked, and could be a serious problem for us. So we put in place. I understand that they are not using that as a guide in proceeding with the CBI application. This is what I understand. I can't verify this, which is unfortunate because I'm going to have to be concerned about the image of the country going forward. So that would be my comment as far as the situation. But it's clear there is a serious problem as far as the fiscal situation in the country is concerned. Now, one of the things I want to remind people, the government is still operating under the policies and programs of the previous government. So whatever fiscal balances that is now existing, despite the fact of the expenditure that they have now undertaken, which is not in control, are still based on what the NNP has really put in place. Now, to judge the government performance and fiscally, so you'd have to wait for a period of time, maybe another 6-7 months or so, before you can judge what this government has done.
If I could just comment. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Selwyn started off with some parliamentary matters on the Public Accounts Committee, as if he was looking at my notes. I hope he didn't. I'm going to follow up with a parliamentary question.
Yes.
One of the things that happen when we have an active opposition and a government, parliamentary democracy, is the opposition having the opportunity to file questions.
Yes.
Within the past couple of months, you have filed a number of questions.
Yes.
And looking at the questions, can you share with us your what you think of the answers you receive, and what are you going to be doing going forward in terms of getting inadequate answers?
Well, for one, first of all, the first set of questions, up to now, it has not been answered. I make this point for this reason, and that may surprise you guys. When a question put to a minister of government by an opposition person, or even a member of parliament who are not necessarily opposition, the answers are researched, the public service collate the data, provide the recommended answer. The minister review it because it's his answers, not the public servants. And the questions I asked the Prime Minister and as Minister of Finance, by the way, I wasn't asking the Prime Minister, I was asking Minister of Finance. He happens to be. When these so-called answers were presented, it was signed by Carver-elect. So it was done at the spur of the moment. So I didn't, they dropped the document on my desk. So I said, well, I will review it accordingly. I can't ask any follow-up question because it wasn't given before for me to review. When I opened it, I realized the answers coming from Carver-elect. So I said to the clerk and others, Carver-elect, who is Carver-elect? She's not a minister in this parliament. She's not I didn't ask Carver-elect any questions. So she's not a creature of the parliament. So I said, As far as I'm concerned, the questions were not answered. So I told the Speaker, the clerk, that he has to inform the member of Parliament who the questions are asked of, and inform them that he has not. He's told me he has done it on several occasions. He has received no reply. And up to today, the man has refused to put his signature. I find this most amazing. The last Parliament, guys, if you were listening, I got up and made the point. I said, up to now, I have not received the answers to the questions. Because the record, the handset has to show that the member of Parliament answered the questions. That's what it has to show. It can't show the cabinet secretary or acting cabinet secretary or PS is answering a question posed to a minister in Parliament. So up to now, so I've asked a second batch of questions. And to the Minister of Finance, well, it appears that there are new Minister of Finance, so hopefully we'll see a change. That no Minister of Finance may answer the questions now. So I have not received answers yet. There's a Parliament session on Tuesday. That's what I understand. And that again is a problem because they call and ask our representative that they want to have a Parliament session. But they want us to agree to a session and they're not without what they're going to discuss. I thought you would put out here are issues that we have going to be taken up in Parliament. And then you set a date. But they're setting a date and later on. So if I have some important things to do, I have to continue to do my own activity. Then I have to decide whether the date you set in is appropriate for me to deal with the issues involved and how much research I would have to do in the process. But because you have not provided the questions or the information, then I am almost agreeing or not agreeing to a date without knowing what we are going to talk about. They continue to do the same thing.
I just want to follow up here. Doesn't the standing order provide that you get the agenda and other documents at least 7 days in advance for a Parliament sitting? Are you saying you haven't received such yet?
No, I'm just telling you, they call in first to say we want to have a Parliament session, so date, without the information. So I'm saying we have to agree whether we want to come to a Parliament session and so date. But if I don't know what you're going to discuss, the point I'm making is I would, if for example, the issues involved is not of major importance, it's a routine matter, I may decide that I have an important business to do, but I don't necessarily have to be there. As an individual, enough members of the opposition can be there. But in other words, I would need to know, it would be valuable for me to know what are the issues. I'm not only stating a point of procedure, how we operate, not necessarily saying that's a major issue. I'm just making a point.
Well, in recent Parliament, we would have had both the Senate and the lower house approving a very, very controversial piece of legislation that, from my research, dates all the way back to the UK. The EU actually seeking and understanding what is going on in terms of it is linked to the EPA and reciprocity. That's the basis for it. Now, when you came into office in 2013, we also had a number of electronic legislations.
Yes.
Eventually, part of that legislation was repealed to ease the public in the interest of the public.
Yes.
Would your administration, if it was to return in office, would repeal the controversial sections of the data protection law?
Well, certainly, as you know, I think it's important to give some views on how this thing came about. Let's face it, this bill, as you pointed out, the draft bill was sent way back in 2011, before our time. The NDC government then, under Tillman Thomas and Company, did not take it to Parliament. They did not do much consultation. We got it and decided that, look, we discussed it at cabinet. That was a draft bill, so we needed consultation. Cabinet had decided, well, we will look at it and send it off, and so on. We did, in fact, had discussed the possibility of going to Parliament and laying it for first reading and giving people time, because that's a normal practice, you know. I think it's only in recent times we have been taking bills to first reading and going through all stages at the same time. Usually you can lay a bill in Parliament first reading and then have sent out to various sectors of the society that you needed to consult with. And then, based on feedback, you then incorporate some of those decisions before you go to second reading and final reading and so on in the Parliament session. And when we did not feel, based on the feedback we were getting, that the bill was in a place that we could get viable support and was right to take to Parliament. So there, because there were a lot of controversial aspects. I'm sure you've heard from a lot of the business sector, the trade union movement, and other people of concerns that they have on this bill. So I suggested, and we suggested in Parliament, wait, let's do the consultation. And they pushed the thing right through because they had a majority. So clearly, if an NNP government get into office, certainly, I would certainly support and recommend that they get rid of some of the sections that are seen to be objectionable. The Antiguan government and other governments did not, when they went to Parliament, did not take some of the sections that were difficult to accept by the population to Parliament. So we may have to do this. And Linda, it may not be Keith Mitchell leading the NNP government. It may not be. But I would assume that I would have influence in any new NNP government in office. I would certainly have some influence, and I would certainly lend my voice to any removal of such controversial sections.
Troy, you going to know? Can I just ask a follow-up? Yeah, my follow-up had to do with your final statement.
I'm pretty sure I've got that.
Yeah. Yes, I did have a question, and what you mentioned it before because I have a series of questions. You said it may not be you leading.
Yes.
You did announce that you're swearing in as opposition leader that the upcoming convention of the NNP, you would most likely not be elected as leader. Have you seen? This was not the first time you would have said about giving up the leadership.
Yeah.
What assurance can you give the people now that you will not be participating in a common election as the political leader?
Let me just say this, and I think it's very important. I honestly believe that the decision that I make, I could have a strong personal position based on the fact that I've given 40 years of service, and I deserve, as a person, to do other things that I wish to do while making my contribution to the national affairs. As long as I have breath in my life, the views of Keith Mitchell and his service to the country would never be less. The thing that I think people have to watch is that there's that perception that the only role you can play is to be in Parliament or be in a position as Prime Minister or Minister. I don't believe that. So the plan is to prepare the new National Party for that transition into new leadership. But that, of course, is dependent on the delegates, on the people. There is that element. Let's go to a convention. Let's change. Look, the NLP lost an election. We have to accept that. And we lost an election primarily, in my view, and that is the assessment. There are others, for whatever reasons, selfish and otherwise, who want to paint it on other reasons. But I'm convinced that we lost the election, but lost the ground. The party work failed us. The government never had a problem. The government was given high accolades for its performance. But the structures on the ground, we were weak. If that is the case, as I believe, it would not make sense rushing into a convention without putting the structures of the party in place. And therefore, the priority right now, which is what the party is working on, is putting that structure in place. So that when the convention is held, the changes that are seen, and not just the question of political leadership, because the number of members of a party who have been there for a long time and given human service, and some of them don't wish to necessarily continue. That also should be given consideration. And I think that is where we are as far as that is concerned. So the emphasis on it, whether it's political leader change or whether it's chairmanship of the party, whether it's other sector activities. For example, we may find that a number of candidates that participated in the last election may not necessarily be the candidates going forward in the next election. But we're not talking that now. We're not talking candidates now. We just had an election. In fact, the only time we have candidates when an election is due. Now, if there is some emergency, then of course we have to move accordingly. So that is the situation where it stands at this particular time. I hope I went around the bush without giving you exactly what you want me to say. And I want to also be very mindful of the feelings of the rank and file of the party and not to give the impression I'm abandoning them at this particular time, because I will never abandon the key supporters of the party.
Troy.
All right. Good afternoon, Troy Gill, MTV News. And seeing that we are talking about the party, I would ask this question. Can you bring us up to speed as it relates to what is the party's plans with regards to the convention? That is one. And what is the position now as it relates to, and I have to ask this question, Honorable Delma Thomas and her position with the party, and if there is a rift, and if there is, because that is a narrative that is being circulated right now, is there any opportunity for reconciliation?
Well, the first thing about, I thought I answered the first question on convention. I made it clear. The issue is not convention. The issue is, at this point, is the organization of the party, which will then lead to convention and to other things that we wish to do. So I thought I answered that one. You're asking about a member. Let me make this point for what it's worth. I don't ever answer a specific question on any member or what they're doing in the party. I don't. But I'll make one general point. I have represented my constituency from 1984. This is literally 38 years, and by the time it ends, it will be little 40-something. I have never felt that I own any constituency. The people voted for me in the context of what the party has promised and what they believe I can deliver within the context of the party. And therefore, every single individual who runs for of constituency with the party support will have to basically understand that fundamental principle. We own no one. And I've said that in my constituency. I owe you, you owe me nothing. You owe me nothing. In fact, I'm proud of the fact that you've given me your loyalty and support for all a number of years, and I would never forget it. And that is how I feel every representative should see themselves. If someone sees themselves differently, I can't speak to that. But I am confident there's no rift within the new national party. There's no rift. There are narratives being developed for a particular reason. People have their selfish motives. And I'm not talking about an individual. There are people on the outside also who are pushing that narrative because NNP won one seat, and I always say 1.5 seats before in 1990. Nobody said that a lot of members wanted to remove the leadership of the party then, and there were a major convention for positions of position in the party. The people voted, and some members left the party. Party went on to win a general elections afterwards. In 2008, when we lost, the members were saying all kinds of stuff. Party regrouped, reorganized. We're back in government with all seats. So the loss of an election could be a very psychologically difficult thing for some people. And how some people handle it might be because maybe the lack of the expectation that is not what expected could cause that sort of behavior problems we've seen in some cases. But to put that as a fight or rift, the party does not have a rift. We're clear, it's a philosophical approach of the new national party going forward, and I'm confident where we are. And I see a lot of new blood. There's a lot of new people seeking to come in, joining the new national party. I won't disclose names at this point in time. But I think this is an excellent sign. Because to tell you the truth, Troy, one of my strongest feeling right now is to see this party go from strength to strength, whether I'm involved directly or not. I've seen too many cases of history in the Caribbean where a party has been very successful and a particular leader. That person retires, I move on, and the party today could hardly field a candidate in a general election. I don't want to see that happen to the new national party. So whatever we do must be structured, organized, and well planned in going forward. It's not about me anymore. I am telling someone this morning, I am at peace. The service I've given the NNP and this country. I'm really at peace, I'm telling you. And sure, I hope you can see it in me. And I feel, what more do I want? 23 years people give you. How many people in their lifetime have been given that kind of solid moral support by the whole population in winning sometime all 15 seats? Who am I to be given all that accolades? And therefore I'm going to be upset that I'm no longer the Prime Minister and the people did not vote for me this time. No. They gave me enough. So I'm a satisfied man. What I want is to see that I can give my party the kind of support to see it go further on, even while I may not necessarily be directly involved, if that happens to be the case.
Okay. I hope you don't mind my next question.
You ask me,
right.
I may not answer everything you ask.
Right. So my next question, as you're on the topic of new blood,
yes.
There has been rumors or have been rumors circulating that there is a new caretaker in her constituency as well. What is your response to that?
No, I think the General Secretary answered that quite well. There's no caretaker. There is no caretaker for any constituency right now. We don't have an election. I'm the representative for Northwest, so you may define me as caretaker for Northwest St. George's. But the party has not said that I am a caretaker for the constituency. As representative, and I have to have a role. So therefore, there will be no such thing as the appointment. The executive is the one who makes those decisions, and the executive has not made any such decision. The General Secretary made that very strong point when asked publicly about a caretaker. That's why I said, I think sometimes when you hear certain things, you just have to smile and leave it like this. Okay, I have one more question before we move on. And my question is as it relates to the payment of bi-monthly salaries. Can you weigh in on what is your take? Well, I strongly advise against it because we had looked at it and realized it could be more problem than I see no, I don't see the value. It can, in fact, provide enormous administrative problems for the staff and the service as a whole, and over the country, because you have to understand people are used to this monthly salaries. What happened was when the thing was officially advanced recently, because don't forget that came on before, and we looked at it, and realized there were no real advantages for this. We could spend some time and discuss the pros and cons, but I'm confident that there are more cons than pros as far as that is concerned. And I don't honestly see. I think I gave the impression that the Prime Minister made the statement, a promise, like he promised he going to contract work is illegal and there will be no contract work. A lot of things were said in the campaign which didn't make sense. And we're going to make all people permanent. And now they're coming to terms that isn't possible. We said so, but we paid a price politically for not supporting that. And that you're going to pay a pension to everybody and so on. And that's a joke because certainly a lot of people have not received so-called pension, although they spent over $70-something million. And I made a point. And then I think you guys have to understand this. With all that money you're going, you can't sit on the ground. If a quarter that has been given to the farmers and other sectors of the society in terms of, I'm not talking giving away money, then I think you would have seen a difference on the ground and a more economic activity in a general sense. So I think one has to come to terms with that whole situation.
Okay, so you don't believe in a narrative by government that this is going to increase cash flow?
How could it be? How could it be? It's the same among the money. What happened was some people believed that they were getting 2 pay. Because I had a gentleman come and say, "But Doc, you don't want to give us the 2 pay?" I said, "With 2 pay?" I said, "You're getting half and half." I thought it was 2 pay. So, no, if it was 2 pay, I would say yes. But let's face it, I'm used to be doing business. I get my salary at the end of the month. I can already calculate how I'm going to live. When I pay my rent or my mortgage or when I pay my car note and so on. No, I don't have to readjust my whole processing of how I operate. I have the same amount of money. The question is, I don't know what the banks will do. Will they take, for example, you have a loan in the bank, will they take the first payment you get, if there's enough money to take that as a loan? I don't see them saying, let me take half now and half tomorrow. That don't make no sense. So I think you're going to hear a lot more. Joy, you would hear there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of dissatisfaction. The government might find it might have a lot of explanation. I wish it went smoothly. And if it went smoothly, I'll give accolade. I'll say, yes, compliments. But my own projection is that there's going to be a lot of concern administratively, and there's going to be a lot of dissatisfaction with the process of how payments are delivered half a month and at the end of the month.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're saying that it should not be implemented, period, or the timeliness of it is not necessarily.
No, I'm saying that I don't believe it adds any value economically. And therefore, to me, it's just someone wanting to meet a commitment. In other words, more a satisfaction of the leadership of the country than it is a value to the workers or the people of the country. Because the unions are saying, many of them I speak to, they were never consulted. They say they never consulted. So I don't know how you implement a major policy like this and not even involve the people whose workers are going to be affected by whatever decision you make. But that's something the government will have to answer to, not me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Troy. My question has to do with your opening statement, actually, of your more than 40 years of contributing to the development of not just Grenada, but to the entire region. When we look at the role you have played in things like the liberalization of the telecommunication sector.
Yes.
So as you look back on those years and telling us today that you may not be the next person going in if NNP was to win the election, what have you identified as your biggest regret and your biggest challenge and your biggest achievement?
Well, first of all, let me start with the more positive one. The biggest, I would say, is achievement, I would say, has to be the way we have improved the lives of a lot of people who needed government the most. And it is, one would say, what do you mean by this? No, you look around the country and the areas of the country where, when I got into government in 84, 1990, you saw a lot of dilapidated homes, no roads, no electricity, no nothing. These people's lives have been improved. I had a case of a brother coming from, to give an example, in Boucherjou in my constituency, who went away, who came back after over 30 years. And when he was brought in, picked up at the airport and coming home, and he reached in Boucherjou. And the guy stopped and said, "You rich?" He said, "No, that's not Boucherjou." Because the homes there, they were all little boathouse with a little stone as a pillar there, and now nice big wall houses all over the place. And everyone had refrigerator, electricity, and all kinds. It was completely transformed. So, and that's why I made the point that transforming the lives of the ordinary folks. I can't say everyone was helped. I would never say that. But I think if I was to say that is my biggest achievement, the quality of life. Sometimes people define quality of life as the amount of money you make. But you could make a decent salary, yet you have no electricity, no water, no telephone, no road, or whatever. You know, the quality of life is dependent on not just the amount of money you make, because if inflation is very heavy in a country and it's affecting salary, amount is not a factor by itself to determine how good you're doing as a person. So I think quality of life is dependent on schools, the education, development, the scholarships given to children. I meet children all over the place, and thank you for Dr. Mitchell for the fact that my daughter got a scholarship and she's now a doctor, she's an engineer, you know. You get these stuff. I was passing through, going to Grenville, what day is that, and as I stopped by Dunfermline to get some rose-colored ice cream by a lady who sold it. And a vehicle was passing, and this vehicle stopped. And the gentleman said, "Look, this lady," people in the car said they want to say hello. And they all identified themselves coming from Carco. And said, "Dr. Mitchell, we are so glad we have an opportunity to meet you." And then my daughter is here, and she got a scholarship in New York Times. She's now getting ready to go and do internship. A poor person. See, that kind of left the Dunfermline, and I felt so good to hear that. That's the kind of thing to me. I made the point, that's when I started the program, and I made the point about what government is all about. What should make us happy? Not the title of minister and prime minister. These things come and go. We own nobody. You know, what should make us proud and always hungry to continue to serve as much as possible is the feeling of how we have changed people's lives. So I would say that. I would say, in terms of you ask me about the biggest regret, I would say to some extent, you wish that some of the decisions that you would have wanted to take, that you're able to get the population onto your side much more than you were able to do. For example, in that constitutional change is pathetic. We somehow failed to get the population to understand a lot of these old parts of the Constitution, you know, does not make sense. So that's a big regret. Every single initiative on that constitutional motions failed. And that clearly has to be a big regret. And I did make the point in well, there goes my period of service as far as constitutional change is concerned. And it will be left to somebody else to take up that challenge. What I will say, and I made the point, people take opposition position on anything when they're in government, when they're in opposition, not thinking of what is best for the country. I would say this: if any serious initiative of any government comes forward that deals with serious change for the country, I'm in opposition, they would have my support. I'm not going to be thinking as it's Dick Mitchell as Prime Minister and he's going to get credit. No. I'm thinking of the children and the future of this country are going to be the beneficiaries of that change. And that's how that decision will be made. I cannot speak for my whole political party, but I've certainly used my influence in getting support from my political party for any serious change. So I say maybe it will happen during my time in opposition. So I would say there was another question, another part. You say achievement, disappointment.
And your challenge, the biggest challenge. What was the very most challenging for you, not just locally, but entwined into the OECS?
Well, I think we have to accept that we would love to see much more unity in the region in terms of fundamental changes that are required for governance. We'd like to see that many of the decisions where we're going it alone, so to speak, that we would have a more, I would say, a joint endeavors on major issues. Take, for example, the issue of the OECS Health Corporation, where we're buying stuff in bulk. The OECS countries individually have benefited. Why can't we have done this in many other cases? The economy of scales would lead to reduction. But I think there's a level of insularity that has plagued the region and the sub-region, historically so. And I hope and pray that that this thing we'll see a reduction in this. I'm not very optimistic. And to tell you the honest truth, you know my passion for cricket. It's very hurtful to see what is happening to West Indies cricket. And still, I've talked to a few of my colleague prime ministers, and they still call me as far as the cricket situation is concerned. And you know, I told them I'm willing to do whatever I can, but it seems so difficult because you have a problem with those who manage the association, the West Indies Cricket Board, and the players themselves cooperating and working together. It can be a situation they're on one side of the fence and the other side of the fence. And if I can be a bridge to that, then I'm willing to play this. A lot of players still call me and still ask me what I think and so on. And that's an area that with my advent of getting out of the active governance aspect in the country, I would certainly want to play a bigger role in West Indies cricket. That would be my love and passion. That's a hobby. That it would not be work as far as I'm concerned. I'll be doing it because of the love for that activity.
I need to get your thoughts on two burning issues that have provoked a lot of conversation out on the ground. One, MNIB. I've been hearing that your government, former, was getting the blame for not doing what was necessary to keep MNIB on the right trail. And now it has happened a situation whereby I'm not too sure whether it's a restructuring, but it has. MNIB has pulled up operations for the time being while at the same time the farmers and they're noticing vegetables in limbo, and there's a bit of uncertainty with no clear guidance except the Prime Minister was saying that by September or the public. I need to know, because after there was a lot of concern out there now, I'm not too sure what is happening or whether the governing structure is recognizing. They are asking the farmers to take a haircut, and I'm not too sure if we are going down a slope with the MNIB or what is the situation with the MNIB, because MNIB is a long-standing institution since from the GOLP time. So I need to hear your thoughts on that one.
Let me follow up. Let me answer and then come, because I don't want to miss the feed. I think you're putting it very mildly, nicely. The government has closed on the MNIB. It's as simply as done that. It could say all kinds of other things. The fact that the Prime Minister, in his first week of governance, did say that he will close on the MNIB. And when the backlash came, and they held up and then say, let's have this consultation, and they went to St. Andrews and had what they considered to be a consultation, but the decision was to close, and therefore they closed that. This thing has affected a lot of workers. There were no plans to see that people had serious opportunities going forward, because if you're going to hurt that amount of workers, you must plan for how you can simply be able to ensure that their livelihood, certain form of livelihood, is maintained. And with some form, even if it's said small business, I don't know how you'll do it. But it seems to me it was a hasty decision, unplanned, and therefore it lacked sensitivity. It lacked empathy, and that's the hallmark of this government. In many of the decisions they take, they don't seem to be thinking of how it affects people, and that especially the poor and vulnerable people in the society. So my view is, and I hear the story, every time they failed and they messed up an issue, they blame the former government. But you in government, no, the people made a change. So stop blaming. Take responsibility for your failures. They're not doing that, but the population knows better. But everything that we had that they're continuing, they want to take credit for it. So everything that does not look good, they'll blame us. Everything they continuing and looks good, everything that looks bad, they blame us. But everything that looks good, they want to take credit. You can't have your cake and eat it at the same time. I think it was a hasty, unplanned, thoughtless decision and lacking empathy, that whole situation with them. And what is pathetic, you in a period of hardship, close down the MNIB, send scores of workers home, the families, and the society. A lot of time a worker is working, not he alone benefiting. Sometimes his grandma, his mother, his cousin, helping a lot of people. So a lot of people have been affected by that decision. But even more so, the farmers. What is happening? What? Then you owe them a lot of money. Then you come in again, you're asking them to take a cut. While you're giving tax breaks to businessmen, people who can afford. You are now saying to the poor farmers who are already struggling, who don't even have a market for a lot of their products, and you tell them to take a haircut. Meanwhile, you raise your salary by $2,000 per month. Each one overnight. The first time I hear someone walks into a job, and before they start to work, they raise their salary. I could have done it, but I certainly would not support, could never support such a decision. So I think it's lacking empathy. And I did say the budget presented by the government was an attack on the poor people. Everything the NDC has done since has shown the emphasis is to show little empathy for poor and vulnerable, and for empathy and sympathy and support for those who are better off in the society. And that's an unfortunate position. And so that is our position. We did say, I remember I did an interview, and somebody was criticizing the government for doing something in that form of the MNIB. And I made the point. I said, no, I would not say that the government should not have dealt. The fact is there are serious problems at the marketing board. And we in government admitted that. The question is how you deal with it. What's the time frame for action, and what are the solutions going forward? That was not done, and that is my problem. Yes.
We are back again, and it's nice to have you entertain us this way, because normally, even when you were in government, yes, we never had this long session because you're always busy. Yes. You have a press conference, you're sure that you want to come to at least say something, but it has to be cut short because there's another appointment. But I'm glad to know that we can get to understand all the semantics of your governance at that time. And it doesn't change because you are still there.
Yes.
All right. A while ago, I needed to ask you that question, but I'll come to that. It brought me back to Eric Williams in Trinidad, Dr. Eric Williams in Trinidad, when he had a lot of years in politics. And at one time he thought time to go. But he went to the convention to tell the people that he's leaving.
Yes.
And that didn't happen. All stood up unanimously and said, no way, you're not going anywhere. No. And he died in government. He died in power.
Yes.
And that was not nice because...
That would not be my dream.
I've been looking at an issue pertaining to the Government Development Bank. It has troubled me as a journalist, a newscaster, and the governance of the country.
Yes.
And while I know for a fact that there have been people who've been leaving, because I thought that the Government Development Bank there was for a special purpose.
Yes, that's it.
And when I noticed that one of the politicians in power, and mark my words, in power, find solace within that same institution, I thought that there was something about interest, conflict, there's something about corruption here. Using that influence to, there was something that was going through my mind, and I'm not too sure whether I was clear on it. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
I would like to hear from you, your take.
I heard about this ask of the GDB to give a loan to a minister of government. And I was asked to that in a public forum, and I say I will not comment because I don't want to comment on anything where I don't have the facts. Because I was wrongfully accused in government before for things I did not do. I mean, a typical case, a briefcase, which was rough on me, and it was a false accusation, and it proven to be so. And therefore, I wouldn't want to be in opposition and doing the same thing to anybody. So I did not comment. I said I wanted to know the facts. Because I can't believe that the Minister of Finance, who's responsible for the GDB, can compromise the development bank in the way that has now come to light. That this, in fact, turned out that. And I'm not interested in dealing with the personality. The name could have been James, John, Lucy, Henry. That's not the issue. The issue is the decision makers, not even the individual himself, because an individual could ask for anything. When I was in government, people come to me for all kinds of things. But I don't understand how a cabinet or a minister of finance could sit and agree to push the development bank to give a loan of over $2 million to an individual to correct his own mismanagement of his personal affairs. I have to use that general term based on what I'm saying. And it turns out from information that there may be highly questionable validity for such a loan. One, the individual in business, there's the Republic Bank there are other major banks. If they're qualified and they meet the criteria, that it seems to me that's what should have happened. In my 23 years as Prime Minister and several years as Minister of Finance, no one in my government has ever approached me to go to the government bank to bail them out in their business or personal affairs, because they know that that would not be entertained. I can't understand the Prime Minister. If I had done this, I'm sure there would be call for my resignation. And I certainly can't understand it. I think you're going to hear a lot more about this. Because it's clear that this is morally reprehensible and inconsistent with the pledge. And while you're doing it, so a poor man comes and he wants a loan. A farmer comes some contractor doing this, and he wants a loan. You ask him for land paper, you ask him for this, he has to bring it for a little 20,000 or 30,000. But a minister comes for $2 million plus annual for having not met his responsibility before, failing to meet his responsibility. And you take the government money? No, whoever has it privately and is a friend of the minister could do it personally. I don't have a problem with that. But to take the government resources, and from my information, it appears that don't forget, the GDB has what you call CDB bank that it has to respond to because they fund a lot of activities, small loans and so on. And it is their money on loan to GDB, generally speaking, for various purposes, for education, for agriculture, for different things. And it certainly would not meet that criteria. So, from information I have, there appears there's serious concern within the regional institutions about that activity. And it could pose a serious problem because the European Development Bank and others who gave resources would have serious concerns about any situation like this that proven to be not in keeping with the rules. If it is so, they would have serious concerns. So that is something I think you're going to hear a lot more about. And I myself still in shock with what is coming out. I can't believe it.
Can I just follow up myself? Yeah, my question, we go into different phases.
Yes.
I'm just stepping back. During the month of October, yes, it's October, we would have seen and heard the Prime Minister in a public meeting announce that there was a cabinet conclusion of 290,000. Eventually, private information was published through the GIS. To some people, you did admit that you have not been often. We weren't able to see you. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to contact you for a while. Share with us your knowledge about that money, how it was done, what is the technical fund. Tell us some more about that.
No, well, the first thing, it is clear that the Prime Minister lied. I don't think anyone can doubt that. The Prime Minister made a public statement that he had a cabinet conclusion where someone was Polish ambassador given ambassadorial title by the previous government, honorary positions. Cabinet conclusion stipulated that the government is going to get $290,000 US. And only 150,000 reached the Treasury, and 140,000 went into account in the south of NNP South constituency. And he said it in a public forum, which seemed to implicate the entire cabinet in sleaziness or wrongdoing and a corrupt arrangement, because any money that's supposed to go to the government treasury cannot be taken by any political organization. So he made that statement. Of course, I was Prime Minister, I was Minister of Finance at the time, and I was Chairman of the Cabinet, and I know that was false. So we quickly rebutted it and said that this was not true. If he made a mistake, then he must apologize, he must correct it. And therefore, I made a statement, and what is fascinating about this whole thing? And this is what the Prime Minister's biggest problem. Whenever he's wrong, he never apologizes, he never admits. And to me, big men admit mistakes. Little children refuse to admit an error, even when it is blatantly clear that they are wrong. And so I charge him for small-mindedness, because it's clear that he was wrong. So I made a statement in Parliament that he needs to come out with this thing. The Prime Minister then proceed to come out with some receipt or something in the South. I don't know that we have a problem with somebody in the South. I didn't know anything about it because I am not the parliamentary representative in the South. Neither I have a constituency called Northwest St. George's. We have their own account. We raise funds. So I knew nothing. No one gave Northwest St. George's $140,000. Although they have a right because we all were seeking donation for election purposes. So there was not an issue. The Prime Minister and his party raised millions of dollars. Did they tell us who gave them those millions of dollars they were spending in the campaign? So the question of a financial support for a political organization election time is not the issue. The issue is the money that's charged to coming from this person to the government of the country, and $140,000 was diverted to the South. And that's totally false. The Prime Minister has been called on by several organizations, several persons on many occasions. The Prime Minister has refused to say a word since then. And I believe the press should never allow this, because I can't believe anyone with any serious sense of responsibility would make a statement like this. Literally calling on all the persons of a previous cabinet, literally saying their views. And has refused, even in the face that is obviously a lie, to say another word. My feeling is that he should never leave this up. That one should never die, because it's just totally wrong in every sense of the word. But that is his problem. He won't admit, even in the face that is clear evidence that he was wrong.
I just want to continue with another question based on money. The NTF funds, now those of us who have been following the CBI and the variant law that coincide with it, so where 40% of CBI earnings had to be put into a special account. The new government has since reduced it to 10%. But in presenting that to the Parliament, the Prime Minister made the statement that no account was set up. As a person who was formerly right there, can you tell us whether or not an account was set up for that NTF money and what that 40% was assigned to be used for?
Capital projects. That is the purpose. You see, we have made it very clear, and that was accepted by the regional international financial institutions. Because the whole point about this is a government must use a lot of the resources of government to build a capital stock. That's how the economy moves forward. Spending money just on recurrent expenditure, paying salaries and so on, cannot be the fundamental approach of government. You have to meet the fundamental responsibility to the recurrent expenditure of the country, salaries and other things that you have to spend money on and supporting your embassies and so on. But you must have enough surpluses and the recurrent side. In conjunction with grants resources, and a combination of those is used to develop capital projects, like building roads, building schools, and doing different things, which create jobs and opportunities. And therefore, 40% of the CBI resources were supposed to be meant to help. And that's why we had a number of capital projects. Kuma Road could not have been built. The funding for the disaster that took place in Molinier was also coming from those capital projects funding. A lot of the funding for many roads we had around the country was coming from that. So the question now is, when you reduce it to 10%, in fact, it means that a lot of the 30% that was normally used in addition to what we have in recurrent surplus is only 10% you have now. So it means that the capital, and if you look at the budget, the capital programs right now is underfunded. So there is not a lot of money being spent on building the capital stock. So when I hear about economic activity, that is where economic activity comes from. That's why we have 6% growth and so on. Now, I understand the projection is that they want 3% this year. I don't know where it's coming from. I can't say, because if your capital stocks are not in funding, and you're only a third of the year so far, gone, it's about 4 months gone, a third, yes, gone. It means, where are you getting the resources to spur economic activity to create jobs? You just lost the SCAPE project funding. You remember Cameron came here and announced almost $80 million EC for Grenada, and we decided the Western Mineral, well, most of that is all gone because of inability to perform by the present government. Again, they say it is NNP. Now, you're in government 9 months. The CDB informed you that there was a problem. And instead of you send the most competent persons, instead of you get a team of qualified persons, I am not going to say who they sent. They would have to defend that. But the persons you sent there clearly was not at the level to ensure that you can provide the sufficient satisfaction so you lost over $70 million. And not a word is being said. Not a word. Could you imagine a government lost $70-odd million in grant funding and you're not hearing anything from it? We're supposed to be doing the work from Queen's Park right up to Samaritan. You know, hundreds of jobs. And the slides on the hills go on the western side. There is something that worries everybody, because every time there's rain and sun, you see some boulders coming down. All this was supposed to be taken care of. But more importantly, economic activity and jobs. You lost all that money. And then I hear some statement about they will build a road straight from Queen's Park, going straight up a highway to Sotes. You can't even do the one you get free money for. Where you getting the money? I know sometimes I hear from fancy stories. It sounds like Nancy's story when you're small. Your grandmother and others tell you a lot of Nancy stories. Sometimes when I listen to Prime Minister, sometimes he sounds like a Nancy storyteller. A bigger new hospital. Hospital is talking hundreds of millions of dollars, or millions of dollars. A lot. I don't know what it is. But what is that? What is a new building? Is that healthcare? Healthcare is not about a building. You could have some covering outside with all equipment, and people are being healed. The building is not healthcare. So you could spend all the amount of money. We spent the hospital services there. The building is good enough for the services that you want. What you need to is improve the quality of the service, the training of more health professionals at all levels, and additional equipment that can deal with the technology and the services available. You have a beautiful facility in Guam. What is down there? Is it the building? The building looks very nice. What is taking place in that nice hospital? You know, I admire the Cuban system. The Cuba have a main central hospital, Havana, but the polyclinics in the different communities, they're small, but most efficient. They have all the equipment, all the nurses, the doctors, services. That is what healthcare is about. Today, you're hearing the cry. Not that it was perfect under the NNP or any other government, but you hear the cry. Most of the health centers don't have medication. They have a minister, nobody knows what he's doing. That's how healthcare is going. All I know is running around in Northwest saying he wants to be the next representative. You can't even manage a simple ministry. You can't imagine you want to be. So Northwest and Georgia's, where we almost, you have what you call there's a barricade there for NDC. It's not a place, that welcome place for an NDC type person to come in. But the point I'm making is healthcare. What are you doing about basic services? No, you're talking about new hospital? What is that? That's a Nancy story. I remember NEC 2008, 2013. Those of you remember, New hospital coming. Some project, with a massive project. I remember they put up a big billboard with how it pretty look nice. What did happen? What happened afterwards? Where that went? We don't hear anything about that afterwards. So that's another Nancy story.
Well, for this one, I just want to find out that question to wind up on. One of the pronouncements the Prime Minister made during one of his very first interview was the sale of GRENLEC. Mm-hmm. The former administration would have had to purchase GRENLEC. I think by now everybody, I don't know if you want to share now directly from your tongue where the government got the funding to pay for that money to WRB, because there was all sort of rumors being said. Mm-hmm. So tell us about your opinion on the announcement that GRENLEC will be sold and preview the government then decision to purchase it, where that money came from. I'm asking that question for those who didn't hear it before.
No, we're savings. It's the management of the country. We did not borrow money. This was savings based on our astute management of the country. If we had not done that, the NDC might have formed, when they say the Treasury, they might have been pregnant with twins. But it looked like it has aborted. I don't know, maybe it lost the child. I don't know, because I'm hearing things are not going well there now. So I don't know. I never had a child. I never was pregnant, so I don't know. You know, I might be in a better position to tell me about abortion and abortedness and so on. But I mean, it's so sad. Basic services of the country. I am not a person adverse to privatization or commercialization of government assets. But there are some assets that are defined the soul of our country. You have one electricity company, and I personally believe you have to be very careful of selling that asset, and not just the sale, but the condition of the sale that gives control of the country's national security asset to people from the outside. Americans will not invest the serious security asset in the hands of anybody that they do not feel have the absolute interest of that of their country. Be careful about this. So I think we did an enormous job by ensuring that we can get that asset back in the hands. I think it will be sad. Remember, the Prime Minister was the lawyer for WRB. And that, I'm not giving out any secret here. And he was paid handsomely to peers for every aspect of the arrangement. In fact, when the deal was consummated, we had to pass the money through Mitchell's law firm to the WRB people. So clearly he has an interest. And I think the Prime Minister should not himself personally should be involved in any attempt or decision making with GRENLEC because of his personal interest that existed then and appeared to me, I don't know, but might be so still. I don't know. So, but I think fundamental is wrong. And I assume, and I did sound a warning, but there's one thing that I would do all that I can in my power, legally and otherwise, within the laws of the land, to ensure that that does not happen. Because I think it will, in fact, affect the future of this country. The children and grandchildren, all children and grandchildren's future, must be protected. And I feel very strongly about that. I could give you a whole history about GRENLEC and the amount of money that was made. I've repeated that over and over before. And I think, I hope the unions and everybody sees this as crucial for the integrity of the country to ensure that GRENLEC remains in the hands of Grenadians.
I do have another question. Troy, you want to go? Yes, and I come after? So I'll just probably ask my last question. Mm-hmm. Basically, is as it relates to, well, you would have functioned in the role of Minister of Finance for quite some time.
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so my next question is basically, What is your take on the recent cabinet reshuffle? We've seen that the Prime Minister has relinquished his role as finance minister after a 9-month period. And I believe one of the reasons is because he wants to give the experience to some of his other colleague ministers. What is your take on
Well, all I can say, it seems a strange one. The Prime Minister has that right, legally and otherwise, to make change in his cabinet as he sees fit, including moving himself. I did that in my period of service to the country. But it seems strange that a government is just elected, you accepted the position as Minister of Finance, and then in 9 months that you're making such an important change. I don't believe the rational livelihood. I believe there might be other reasons for that decision. But that is left to be seen. It will play itself out. But I certainly don't accept the rationale given. I think it's a clear indication of something more in the matter besides the person.
My other question, upon the new government taking office and you would have put into the position of opposition, among the many things that we would have started hearing about in terms of scandal and remarks was the word faith.
Yes.
As the former chairman of the cabinet and the finance minister, tell us what was your understanding of that organization, as well as the CJ, I think CJ, the one that was associated with the Parliament.
Yes. Well,
share with the public more about the working arrangement of these two
yes.
entities.
Well, I don't think they would ever attempt to say there was corruption in the CJ1. I don't think they ever charged corruption. And even faith that they charged corruption, they were not able to verify that. The fact is, the cabinet got the proposal from the Ministry of Education relative to protection of the schools and the students and teachers of cleaning the appropriate schools right around the country. And the Ministry of Education provided a proposal. We were satisfied in COVID-19. Recall then the sensitivity of that situation, and we supported it. And a lot of ordinary people were employed. Now, I cannot tell you that necessarily every person employed how they were employed. I cannot tell you that. The fact is there were poor people being employed. Now, you come into government. The people are employed by government. You start making also charges. When the data was presented and the facts relative to the amount of people that were employed and the salaries of those individuals, it was clear there could not have been any major corruption. If you want to say the money was not optimally spent, whether they considered about almost every government project and every ministry, every government period of time. But to charge the minister, which was very unfair, of corrupt practices. And that is my problem with some of the things that are done. You make statements implicating people and possible wrongdoing, and you have not been able to back it up. And meanwhile, you refuse to pay the poor people. Even if there was something wrong, deal with that. But pay the poor people. Why every time a decision is to be made is the poor people have to suffer by this government? And that is my fundamental problem with the faith issue. Pay the people. They did not go and take a work. They were given a job by the legitimate government of the day. So they have to pay them. Whether they get paid today, tomorrow, next year, next month, they will have to be paid. But it's not fair because many of these people are home and they have their families to take care. I call on the government consistently to pay the people their rightful salaries for the work that they did. CJ thing, there was absolutely no attempt to imply. The CJ thing came about for one reason. The salaries of services for the parliamentary officers, the opposition, the members of parliament, staff there had to be paid. Electricity, telephone, water had to be paid. What is happening? The former Commissioner of Police, who was then Clerk of Parliament, he was not supportive of the decision of Parliament. He said it was too much work for him and he could not handle it. So people's water was being cut off, telephones are being cut off, electricity are being cut off because monies were not paid. The cabinet, under those conditions, had consultation with the Parliament and verified what they were saying. We said, look, well, the better thing to do is ensure we don't want to be personally handling cash as parliamentarians. And I would always oppose this. And they said, look, it is better you acquire the services of a company who will get the resources and pay the staff. And we give them the amount in advance each time. So the bills were presented and everybody was paid accordingly. We put out ads for individuals who were interested. CJ was one of the companies that came forward. It was verified that they were could do the work. Not many people did offer the services or apply for the contract. And that's how they got it. Now, the lady involved in the constituency happened to be somebody from my constituency and who was a well-known public servant. And no one could charge that there was any corrupt practice. I've never had an opportunity to even pass by where they were working and so on. And I think it's clear to people that that there was no problems related. And I told the Parliament, anytime they feel they can handle the payments of the officers, CJ services will be no longer required. And so when they indicated after the change of government, I made that statement in Cabinet and the Finance Committee meeting, that's up to the government to decide. Just make sure the people, offices are paid. And that's what happened. So CJ no longer providing the services to the Parliament.
Let me just back up a bit. You're saying that the then Clerk of Parliament,
yes,
who was Mr. Thompson,
yes,
he had an issue or challenge in the month-to-month administration of the MP offices?
Yes, you could ask him. Could ask the people.
And his reason for that was it out of the parliamentary jurisdiction? Was it out of public service
rules?
rules?
That's necessarily wrong for him to do. Saying that, but that was historically, don't forget, we never had that arrangement before.
Oh.
Don't forget, that was never had before. You should just give the parliamentarian $1,500 and they manage their constituency office. And that was very inadequate, and everybody agreed on that. So they agreed that salaries, staff should be employed, and payment of bills and so on must be done. Because when you gave them $1,500, very few of us had a parliamentary office. I had one. Many people just didn't even.
Sometimes I think it's good for people to have a better understanding what happened.
Agree.
Because I remember it was under your administration that $1,500 was in aside.
Yeah.
Now you're saying that $1,500 was given to the MPs personally then to take care.
Yes.
But when you came back into office in 2013, a decision was made to hire more staff, and so there were
hire
more
proper staff for every constituency. That decision was taken. And then we agreed on salaries and everything like that. And then we asked the clerk, who's supposed to be responsible for the Parliament. And it happened to be Thompson. And initially he didn't say no, but problems, as I mentioned before. And then it was decided that, no, we don't want to handle it personally, because it means that you'll have to collect those monies and you're responsible for paying staff. So we got the services of a company and CJ. That's how CJ came into being, and they provided accounts. So the only reason that they put it under the vote of the Prime Minister's office. That means people said, oh, we want this control over it. I said the Prime Minister's office was too small to handle this. I would love to have given it to any other ministry, but I had a responsibility. So we agreed to put it under the Prime Minister's ministry, and the Prime Minister's ministry provided subvention every month in advance to CJ, and they provided accounts and provided accounting for the monies as was spent. That's how it was done.
Just a matter of clarity again. There are two persons who was appointed as ambassador at large and eventually charged with fraud by the SD in the U.S. That is Mr. Liu, and recently we had Mr. Jason's son.
His son?
Yeah, the gentleman who was appointed to the WTO. Well, as you think back now, do you have any concern that these two persons having charge facing these financial fraud matters could have a negative implication on the country?
No, well, let's face it. When the persons who applied, the checks were done. All the checks were done on the individuals, and they met the criteria and the conditions for the appointment. And that was done. They had to go to the regional security system. All that was done. So all the checks were done. But you and I know, a man might be clean today, and he does something afterwards. You can't control what every person does in their entire life every single day. So it was not a positive thing for us, but I don't know that you can, similar, if you made several appointments and one or two turned out to be a problem after the appointment, I don't know that you can say, if you had information that these people were not bona fide and you went ahead, then I think it's a big problem. Because it will show there's a lot more in the matter besides the person.
My final question as we wrap up, and I hope I get an opportunity very soon to talk to you again. How do you spend your days now?
One, I am doing my autobiography. It's a proud moment. I have an author who has done a number of bestsellers on the New York Times list, who did work for Ronald Reagan and a number of prominent Americans. So I do taping on a regular morning. Last 2 weeks we haven't done anything. So I spend a couple hours a day. Starting from when I was a little boy, growing up in Shenda and Brazan and community, and all the time the cricket life and sports and culture, right through school, academic life, going to the United States, teaching, working as a consultant and doing reasonably well, and decision to come home. I'm going through my whole life. Well, clearly, Linda, the final chapter is not yet going to be written. That awaits for whatever is going to happen in this period. But I'm working on that, so I spend a considerable amount of time a day reading, writing, and I'm doing a lot of relaxation. You see the pool there? This is one of the best period of my life. So tell you the truth, for me personally, this is one of the most happiest time physically. On the treadmill every morning, I spend about 75, 80 minutes and do about 1,200 calories on treadmill and have some weights there. So sometimes I'm not as consistent. I used to go to the gym more often, but I have not in recent weeks going, so I might be getting a little not as solid as before. So I spend a lot of time on fit. I'm very careful about fitness. I get up in the morning, about 4:30, so 4:45. I make my coffee, cinnamon and coffee. I have a cup of that. Then I have a big container of hot lime juice. They say that's important for washing the body, cleansing you. And then I do turmeric and ginger, a big flask of that later. That's how I spend my day. I might go to St. George's a lot. I'm fixing the house in Happy Hill, so I would have to be there when that is completely dealt with. I'm dealing with some personal issues that have to be resolved going forward. So that's how I spend my time. And I play a lot of dominoes now. And I do a bit of the keeping the party stocks alive. we have these public meetings, and we've done one in St. Mark's here. We did one in my constituency where we have over 100, 200 persons. I talking to them about what taking place in the country. I did it in St. Patrick West, St. Patrick East, and the biggest one so far has been in St. Andrews Northeast. That's when Kate came back 2 weeks ago. So we should be going to Northwest St. Andrews, where Devon Thomas is a representative. We'll be going there very soon. We should have Gregory Boyne in Southeast St. George's soon. Oh, we did one in St. Andrews Southwest. Sister Yolan Bain. And all the meetings are going extremely well. People are very much interested. They love to see us. We have to provide hope. Because a lot of people are demoralized. It's hard. If the loss affected us at leadership, you can imagine what it is for the poor rank and file who never thought that was a possibility. That was tough for them. So being out there with them it's good therapy for me, and it's good therapy for them. I get a lot of hugs and kisses. I always tell them, I say, you don't have the virus now? But it's fun being out there. Being with people, still one of the most happiest thing in my life. I can't live by myself without people. I love to be around people. I am not a person who could sit and just spend a whole day in a house. I like to be around with the boys, dominoes. Well, I can't play the cricket again, but I used to be doing that. But I am enjoying life. My problem, the only thing that gets me down is when people call me and come to see me at Bush's office, and you see they break down in tears. They can't help their children to go to school and things that they need. There's somebody sick. They need medical attention. They don't have help. Some things we used to do in government easily. And I am not in a position to have everybody that come to me for everything. So it hurts. That's the time I feel emotionally down. I'm affected by this. That's the only time I get a sense of, my God, being out of government. Other than that, for me personally, I repeat, I am at peace with where I am as an individual.
Thank you.
And this is where we come to an end. Sad to say we end. For me personally, I could stay up here in this environment as much as I like. But we have to come to an end. Dr. Mitchell, it was nice speaking to you. I hope that the next time we have another journalist, leader of the opposition engagement, I am counted in as well, because these days you have young people in charge of the whole plethora of the media fraternity, and they count me as old too, Nonetheless, I'm there.
We all get the fact he called you old?
When they stumble, I will always tell them, hi, you're stumbling. And they appreciate it nonetheless. But we have that camaraderie. And it's nice to know that we are here with you. As a matter of fact, we have a wealth of information, because since after the election, no one really knew your thinking. What about what we're going forward, how this and how Dr. Mitchell feels about certain things that are happening, because the governance of the country is always important to know. Except there's one thing about this constitutional changes and the way how we attack this. I know that at the time of the independence, the constitution that we have is not the constitution that some of the other islands have,
Don't forget, this was handed down to us. We didn't have no say in this. And
so
that's why the need for changes are extremely important, because, let's face it, Britain don't really take us on seriously now. When Cameron came here, in my private chat, after we met the cabinet, he said he wanted a one-on-one with me, personally. And he's no longer prime minister, so I could afford to say some of the things we talked about. And he said to me, I want you to tell me straight, how do you call it, because it seems as one of the long-serving prime ministers in the region, how do you and the people of Grenada and your colleagues in the region and the people see Britain? And he tell me, don't hold back anything. I was brutally frank with him. And he after I finished with him, tell him how Britain let us down. Look at the Parliament; they never help a cent to build it back. Look at the the Governor General's residence where the Queen stayed and Ronald Reagan stayed. Nobody, no fix. The UAE had to help build back the parliament. UAE and Mexico, they didn't give us a parliamentary system. And I really was really bad. And he said to me, he said, Prime Minister, I want to thank you for your frankness. That's why I'm here. I want to correct that image. And he announced this massive support as a start. Next thing, my friend go back to Britain, and then he go and hold his referendum. So I met him a few years afterwards. I said, but why you did that for, man? He said, well, that's life. But I just want to say something. This is very important to me. It's refreshing, and I look forward to that. I think if we could hold this maybe every 2 months or every month, I don't have a problem. And just interchange some of the persons involved in the media. I do have a concern on some of the things I seek out in the name of media. You know, I tell the honest truth, and Selwyn and Troy, I look at the days of Leslie Pierre, Alistair Hughes. I mean, you're not going to be like them. No one could replicate another person's personality. But I remember Alistair Hughes. Whenever in government and something happened, he would call and say, "Ma, what stupidness you do now?" And that's how he starts off. And he said, "I come here to chat with you." And he said, "Well, I hear this, watch this one." He never put out a story before he talks to the individual. After Leslie Pierre was like that. Throw all kind of bounces at you, but he comes to you, speaks to you, he gets your side. And when you see the story sometimes, when I say, "By the way, you still don't have it right." But that's my side. That's how I see it. But that is what media is supposed to be. You see a story, just put out a story. And somebody tell you something about somebody, and you just put it out. My God. Especially if I come to you and tell you something about Dick Mitchell, you're not supposed to put it out. You're supposed to at least ask Dick his views on look, Dr. Mitchell says so and that's your role. But there's this biased position. That's my side. Anything he says to me, I put it out. But that's not media. And seriously, I think I've made this point to media person, even as Prime Minister. I'm repeating it as opposition. I just think I never went to a communication school, but I've studied media. I've watched the operations of media. You give the person an opportunity to respond. You and I know there's certain publications here that just, and certain people can't do wrong at all. And certain people can't do anything right. That's not our media. I have said to people, there's certain media house here in the name of a media newspaper. It's not a news, it's a scandal sheet. You know, and I make no apologies for it. Because you can't write 40, 45 or 60, 50 editorial out of 52 for the year, costing one man. And you call yourself a media, you don't write about education, you don't write about health, you don't write about sports. A man could perform and do well, and you see nothing in the paper, only about this person and that person politically. That's not media. So I lament this, and that's my views. I would continually say it. And maybe it's better for me to say it while I'm in opposition, because when you're in government, they always think you're trying to protect yourself and so on. But I value this opportunity, and I look forward to that sort of communication in the future. I look forward to this. But I really enjoy the session here. And I think people are looking forward to it. And I believe I have a responsibility, having been there for 23 years as Prime Minister, to keep engaged and to give people hope and to tell people that don't worry, I am not leaving to go anywhere. I'm here. You'd have my knowledge, my information, my experience, and my efforts. As long as the people want it, I'll be there with them.
Thank you.
breaking all rules with fun, picong, and rhyme. If the campaign didn't pass in the yard, they wouldn't have say, oh, me mad bad mood, okay, go pass in the yard. You say to make it better, you make the stimmy finger. Now only 1 year later, this country having heart failure. Hey, you vote, you don't vote, same damn thing. The heart or the hand, same damn thing. The change, we ain't change, same damn thing. You win, you don't win, same damn thing. If the taxman didn't pass in the yard, they wouldn't have said, oh, me mud bad, Mr. Finance, don't pass in the yard. We working for little money. Hey, hey, you take it back as you give me. You angry me for CT. And now you kill me with the dead levy. Hey, we vex, we don't vex, same damn thing. We talk, we don't talk, same damn thing. We walk, we don't walk, same damn thing. We pay, we don't pay, same damn thing. People ask the same questions. They want some action, nothing positive going on. What can it be? Like the password is kill we.